The first SOS signal arrived at 0314 Galactic Standard Time. Most civilizations ignored it. Distress calls were common near the rim. Pirates, solar storms, reactor leaks, slave uprisings. Space was full of desperate voices begging for help that never came. In the Orion Assembly, there was even an old saying, "If you answer every cry, eventually one becomes your own." So when the automated emergency beacon erupted across civilian and military channels alike, few commanders cared enough to listen. But those who did remembered it forever. The message repeated in broken intervals through static and radiation interference. Unknown hostile fleet, civilian convoy destroyed, requesting immediate assistance, coordinates attached. Then a pause, then another voice. A child. "Please, somebody answer." The signal originated from the Kellar Fringe, an isolated cluster of mining systems owned by the small Varethi coalition. Weak, neutral, economically insignificant. Their worlds produced industrial gases and low-grade metals no major empire considered worth conquering. Until the Dravak Dominion arrived. The Dravak were old predators of the galaxy. Not the oldest species, not the smartest, but unquestionably the most feared. They had evolved on a superheated volcanic planet with crushing gravity and an atmosphere toxic to most life. Their bodies were armored in black segmented plating. Their blood carried acidic enzymes capable of burning through metal. Their military doctrine was brutally simple. Strike first, strike hard, leave survivors only if useful. Entire civilizations vanished when the Dominion expanded. The Assembly protested. The Dominion ignored them. By the time diplomatic sanctions were proposed, the Varethi worlds were already burning. Orbital stations shattered under kinetic bombardment. Cities collapsed beneath plasma rain. Millions fled into deep space aboard overcrowded civilian transports while Dravak hunter fleets pursued them for sport. And through all of it, the SOS continued. Nobody came. Not the Seraphin Trade Alliance, not the mighty Helios Republic, not even the so-called peacekeepers of the core. Every species calculated the same thing. Helping the Varethi would mean war with the Dominion. And no one wanted that. Except one civilization, a species most of the galaxy still misunderstood: humans. The emergency signal finally reached Sol 3 days after the attacks began. The transmission crossed relay buoys, damaged communication hubs, and abandoned trade satellites before entering human-controlled territory near the outer colonies. It was intercepted by a civilian long-range freighter named Wayfarer Dawn. Captain Elias Ward listened silently as the message played across his bridge speakers. The child's voice echoed through the cabin. "Please, somebody answer." The bridge crew stared at him. One officer spoke carefully. "Sir, that region belongs to the Dominion now." Everyone understood what that meant. Stay away. Humanity had joined the galactic community only 62 years earlier. Compared to ancient empires, they were young, unpredictable, primitive in some ways, but terrifying in others. Humans came from Earth, a world officially classified by the Galactic Assembly as a Category 9 death world. Violent tectonics, extreme weather, predatory megafauna, aggressive microbial ecosystems, rapid environmental instability, and one horrifying evolutionary detail every xenobiologist agreed upon: humans are persistence predators. They do not simply fight, they endure. That alone made the older species uneasy. The Dominion learned that lesson during a border conflict 20 years earlier,
A small human patrol fleet had resisted a force 3 times larger for 17 days despite catastrophic losses. Most species surrendered when survival became statistically impossible. Humans became dangerous. Still, humanity remained relatively isolated politically. They traded, they explored, they avoided major wars. Many believed humans lacked the numbers to threaten the larger powers. Captain Ward replayed the distress signal again. Then he leaned forward. "Transmit priority emergency relay to Sol." "Yes, sir." "Attach our recommendation." The communications officer hesitated.
And what recommendation is that? Ward looked at the stars beyond the viewport. We answer. Far away, on Earth, the signal reached the United Nations Stellar Defense Council. Admiral Sophia Reyes listened without expression. Around her, politicians argued immediately. The Dominion territory is beyond our jurisdiction. This could provoke escalation. We cannot risk open war over a mining coalition. They are already dead. Then the child's voice played again. Please, somebody answer. Silence filled the chamber. Sophia Reyes closed her eyes briefly. She had seen war before. Mars secession, Titan insurgencies, the Europa plague riots. Humanity survived because someone always answered the call. Always. She opened her eyes. Deploy the 7th Fleet. The chamber exploded. You can't be serious. The Dominion fields over 4,000 warships in that sector. This action could trigger interstellar conflict. Reyes stood slowly. You're right. The room quieted. Then she continued. It could. One politician leaned forward nervously. Then why would we proceed? Her answer became legendary decades later. Because they asked for help. The 7th Fleet mobilized within 2 hours. The galaxy noticed immediately. Human military deployments were unusual. Large-scale mobilizations were almost unheard of. Trade networks exploded with speculation. Observers watched as carriers, dreadnoughts, destroyers, supply vessels, and troop transports emerged from Sol shipyards in staggering numbers. Then came something stranger. Civilian fleets joined them. Freighters, mining ships, salvage vessels, medical carriers, independent colonies, private security groups, volunteers. Thousands upon thousands of ships aligned behind the human military armada. The assembly panicked. Messages flooded Earth. Stand down. Negotiate peacefully. Do not escalate the conflict. The Dominion sent only one response. Approach Varethi territory and be annihilated. Humanity answered with silence. Then the fleet accelerated. The journey to the Khelar Fringe took 11 days. Along the way, more ships joined. Some belonged to humans living beyond official borders. Others came from species the Dominion had harmed in the past. Not enough to change the balance of power, but enough to matter. When the Armada finally emerged from jump space near the Varethi systems, the galaxy watched through live tactical feeds. What they saw shocked everyone. The system was a graveyard. Burning stations drifted through debris fields. Atmospheric fires consumed continents below. Civilian wreckage filled orbital space. And waiting among the ruins stood the Dravak Dominion fleet. 4,622 warships. Black armored hulls stretching across space like predators circling prey. The human fleet numbered barely half that. Assembly analysts predicted total human defeat within 4 hours. Dravak Supreme Commander Zyron broadcast first.
His towering reptilian frame appeared across all channels. "You entered Dominion territory illegally." Admiral Reyes answered calmly from the bridge of the UNV Resolute. "Negative. We are responding to a distress signal. The Verethi coalition no longer exists. That is not your decision to make." Zyron's eyes narrowed. "You challenge the Dominion over prey?" Reyes leaned forward slightly. "No."
Her voice became ice. "We challenge you over civilians." The transmission ended. Then the battle began. The Dravak attacked with overwhelming force. Waves of strike cruisers surged forward behind kinetic artillery barrages designed to cripple enemy formations instantly. Most species would have retreated. Humans accelerated directly into the attack. Dominion commanders were briefly confused. Human ships moved aggressively close instead of maintaining safe engagement range. Then, the first human rail cannons fired. Entire Dravak cruisers vanished in flashes of molten debris. Missile swarms followed. Electronic warfare pulses blinded targeting systems. Human destroyers plunged through enemy formations with terrifying precision. And still they kept advancing. Dominion casualties rose rapidly, but so did human losses. Ships exploded across the battlefield. Hull breaches vented crews into space, yet no vessel retreated. The assembly watched in horror. Human tactics bordered on madness. Damaged ships deliberately rammed Dominion carriers. Disabled cruisers continued firing until reactors detonated. Boarding teams launched themselves into enemy vessels despite near-certain death. One analyst whispered the question every species began asking simultaneously. How are they still fighting? The answer came from an intercepted human communication. A young officer aboard a crippled frigate spoke while alarms screamed around him. "Civilian evacuation convoy still trapped in Sector 12. Another voice answered, "You've lost engines." "Doesn't matter. You can't survive another attack run." A pause. Then the officer replied softly. They asked for help. His ship charged anyway. The story spread across every military network in the galaxy. By the third day of battle, the Dominion realized something horrifying. Humans were not trying to win conventionally. They were buying time. Hidden beneath the chaos, thousands of evacuation ships were escaping the system under human protection. Every minute humans held the line meant more civilians survived. The Dominion adapted quickly. Commander Zyron ordered all forces to target evacuation corridors directly. If humans defend prey, kill the prey. That decision sealed the Dominion's fate, because another signal had already left the battlefield. A human emergency transmission, encoded, ancient, simple. SOS. Not to the galaxy, to humanity itself. The signal reached Earth in seconds through quantum relay networks. And something changed. Across human space, civilian broadcasts interrupted normal programming. Emergency channels activated. Reserve veterans reported for duty without being asked. Factories shifted to wartime production overnight. Colony defense fleets launched spontaneously. The message carried only 7 words. 7th Fleet engaged, civilians under extermination threat. Nothing else was necessary. The galaxy had never truly understood humans. Most species believed humanity fragmented politically, too emotional, too divided, too chaotic. They mistook internal disagreement for weakness.
But humans possessed one terrifying evolutionary trait no one had predicted. When confronted by monsters, they united. 3 days later, deep space sensors detected incoming jump signatures near the Kalar fringe. At first, Dominion analysts assumed it was a sensor malfunction. The readings were impossible. Then reality arrived. Thousands of ships emerged from hyperspace, then thousands more. Carrier groups, planetary assault fleets, heavy dreadnought divisions, civilian militias, mercenary squadrons, automated drone carriers, the largest human armada ever assembled. Over 12,000 vessels, and still more kept arriving. The battlefield fell silent. Even the humans of the 7th Fleet stared in stunned disbelief. One exhausted bridge officer whispered, "Holy hell!" Then a new transmission appeared across all frequencies. It came not from a politician, not from Earth, but from an old human woman aboard a civilian hospital ship. Her gray hair floated gently in zero gravity as she spoke calmly into the camera. "You hurt children." Behind her stood hundreds of ordinary humans.
Doctors, engineers, farmers, teachers. None were soldiers. All had come anyway. The woman's eyes hardened. "Now you answer to all of us." The transmission ended. Then, humanity attacked. No species had ever witnessed warfare like it. Human fleets moved with terrifying coordination despite their enormous size. Dominion formations collapsed under relentless multi-vector assaults. Where Dravak ships relied on overwhelming force, humans relied on adaptability. If missiles failed, they switched to rail cannons. If rail cannons failed, they boarded. If boarding failed, they rammed. If crippled, they turned dying ships into bombs. Every destroyed human vessel became another weapon. Dominion commanders struggled to understand the psychology behind it. Why continue fighting under impossible conditions? Why sacrifice so much for strangers? Captured human communications provided the answer repeatedly. Hold the line. Get the civilians clear. Protect the convoy. No one gets left behind. Those words appeared everywhere. To humans, the Varithi were not prey. They were people. And humans protected people. The battle lasted 9 more days. Entire fleets burned. Moons shattered under bombardment. Space itself glowed from radiation and debris. But slowly, impossibly, the Dominion began losing ground. Human persistence became unbearable. Dravak crews exhausted themselves attempting to crush enemies that simply refused to stop. One Dominion officer reportedly screamed during combat recordings, "Why do they keep coming?" A dying human Marine answered during the intercepted transmission, "Because you started this." The turning point came above Varithi Prime. Commander Zyron deployed the Dominion flagship Night Terror, a colossal warship nearly 30 kilometers long, armed with planet-killer weaponry. Its arrival devastated human formations instantly. Dozens of ships died in minutes. Admiral Reyes knew the truth immediately. If the flagship survived, the evacuation would fail. So she made a decision. The UNV Resolute accelerated directly toward the Night Terror alone. Her officer stared at her in disbelief. "Admiral!" She never looked away from the tactical display. "Signal all remaining civilian transports." "Ma'am?" "Tell them to run." The Resolute charged through enemy fire. Armor peeled away under plasma impacts. Entire sections of the ship decompressed violently. Still, it advanced. Dominion broadcasts mocked the suicidal maneuver. Until human reinforcements appeared. Not military ships, freighters.
mining vessels, tugs. Civilian craft flooded forward beside the Resolute. An old cargo captain transmitted openly across all channels. "If the Admiral's going," another voice interrupted, "then we go too." Hundreds followed. Then, thousands. The improvised fleet slammed into the Dominion formation like a tidal wave. Civilian ships detonated reactors at point-blank range. Mining lasers carved through warship armor. Boarding crews attacked with industrial equipment and homemade explosives. The Dominion broke. Not physically, psychologically. For the first time in their history, the Dravak experienced fear. Because humans were not fighting like prey, they were fighting like something far worse. Protectors. And there is nothing more dangerous in the universe than a protector who believes innocents are threatened. The Resolute finally reached the Night Terror. Admiral Reyes opened one final channel to Commander Zyron. "You could have stopped." Zyron snarled. "You are weak creatures driven by emotion." Reyes smiled sadly. "No." Her fleet surged behind her. "That's what makes us strong." The Resolute rammed the Dominion flagship at relativistic speed. The explosion lit the system brighter than a star. When the radiation cleared, the Night Terror was gone. So was the Resolute. For 13 seconds, silence covered the battlefield. Then Dominion formations began retreating. At first slowly, then chaotically. Human fleets pursued relentlessly. By the end of the week, the once feared Dominion Armada had ceased to exist as an organized force. The survivors fled beyond known space. They never invaded another inhabited world again. The aftermath changed galactic civilization forever. Over 2 million Varithi civilians survived because humanity answered the SOS. Entire species reevaluated everything they believed about humans. They had assumed Deathworlders were monsters barely restrained by civilization. In truth, humanity's greatest strength was not aggression. It was empathy. Humans could imagine another being suffering as if it were their own, and once they did, they would walk into hell itself to stop it. Years later, a memorial stood above Varithi Prime. Ships from hundreds of species visited annually. Engraved into black stone were the final words transmitted by Admiral Sofia Reyes before the Resolute disappeared. A message now taught in military academies across the galaxy. When someone cries for help, you answer. Below the quote appeared the names of every human ship lost during the battle. There were thousands. And at the very bottom, written in both human standard and Varithi script, were the words that forever changed galactic history. The SOS awakened the Deathworlders, and the galaxy was never the same again.